The sound that broke my morning wasn't a bird call or the wind across the fields. It was the roar of a bulldozer. 1 second, I was holding my coffee mug, halfway through a quiet toast to the sunrise. And the next, it shattered on the kitchen floor as I rushed to the window, heart hammering like it used to when I still wore a badge. There they were, 3 massive machines ripping into the edge of my driveway like it was some kind of construction site. The gravel we'd laid with our own hands 50 years ago was being tossed like trash. And standing at the center of it all, like some queen on a battlefield, was a woman in a tailored suit, clipboard in hand, barking orders like she ran the whole damn county. That woman was Ivy Prescott, president of the Briarwood Estates HOA. Sharp tongue, colder eyes, and a reputation for playing dirtier than a hog in July. I didn't know much about her at the time, but I was about to learn fast. I flung the door open and marched down the porch steps. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I yelled, barely hearing myself over the machines. She turned to me like I'd interrupted a manicure. Smiled that tight, corporate smile you see in real estate brochures. "Mr. Logan," she said, her voice sweetened with just enough sarcasm to make your teeth rot. "This access road is in violation of community land use policy. Your encroachment has been noted in multiple notices. We are here to correct it." She waved a manila folder full of what she claimed were legal documents, then added, with no shame, "You've ignored us long enough." That's when it clicked. She thought she could bully me out of my own land with the same tactics she'd used on others, buried under paperwork, threats, and overpriced penalties. What she didn't know, what she never even thought to ask, was that I'd spent over 30 years as the lead surveyor for our county. I literally drew half the maps still hanging in their offices. I knew every tree stump and fence post in this region. And I knew one thing for sure. That driveway? It wasn't on her land. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Ivy Prescott wasn't the kind of person you argued with on a driveway at sunrise. She didn't play fair. She played final. 6 months before all this, I'd moved back to the farmhouse after losing my wife, and cancer took her slow and mean. After she passed, I needed somewhere real, somewhere I could breathe. That 100-acre stretch of pine and prairie was built by my grandfather, raised up during the Depression, held together through 2 wars and 3 generations of blood, sweat, and love. I came back to fix the porch, tend a garden, and maybe figure out who I was without her. It had been peaceful until Ivy and her army of bulldozers brought war to my gate. The letters started innocent enough. A note about unpermitted landscaping, then one about a non-compliant mailbox. I laughed them off, threw them into a folder I labeled nonsense, and figured it'd stop. But Ivy didn't stop. She escalated. A certified notice demanding 15 grand for road encroachment. Then 25. Always threatening to restrict access permanently unless I signed some compliance agreement admitting wrongdoing. I still remember Lucy, my neighbor from the east property line, bringing over a rhubarb pie the afternoon I showed her the latest letter. "Don't underestimate her," she said, squinting at the fine print. "She's not just a power-hungry HOA president. She's a failed developer trying to rebuild her reputation off other people's property." Lucy used to be a journalist. Retired, but sharp as a tack. "She's been known to push people out with fake violations until they sell," she added. "You'd be surprised how many folks give in just to get some peace." I should have listened closer. I should have seen it coming. That morning, Ivy blocked the only access road to my farm with 10 bulldozers. 10. She brought security. 2. Uniformed rent-a-cops leaning on a black SUV like they were guarding Fort Knox. It wasn't just intimidation. It was theater. She was making a statement. "This is mine now." I told her I needed 24 hours to consult my lawyer. She refused. Flat out. "You've delayed long enough," she snapped. "We act today." So I walked back inside, dialed Bruce, my old friend, now deputy county clerk, and told him everything. Bruce was stunned. "They're out of their minds," he said. "That road's been marked on every official plat since before the subdivision even existed." I told him to pull the archives. I was coming in. Lucy drove me through a back road barely fit for tractors. On the way, she told me more about Ivy. Apparently, her company tanked a few years back. Massive condo project called the Highlands. Went bankrupt. Investors furious. She barely dodged fraud charges. Now, she's rebuilding through the only thing left to her, HOA authority. And my farm? My farm was her golden ticket. When I got to the county building, Bruce was already waist-deep in boxes. I joined him, and we dug through decades of survey maps, filings, and amendments. And there it was, a forged document, dated 3 years ago, subtly shifting boundary lines just enough to make it look like 27 feet of my road touched HOA land. But it wasn't real. The signature? Supposed to be mine. It wasn't. Not even close. Caroline, our county attorney, joined us after Bruce called her in. She took one look at the forged documents and said flatly, "This is criminal fraud." Then she pulled another file, plans submitted under a company called Stonecrest Partners, a luxury development, right on top of my land. Guess who owned the company? Ivy's husband, James Prescott. Now it all made sense. They weren't just trying to bully me. They were trying to flip my land for millions. But I wasn't about to let them. I called Sheriff Dalton, a friend from way back. When I told him what Ivy had done, blocking a property with no permit based on forged docs, he said, "Give me 20 minutes. By the time we got back to the farm, Lucy had already gathered a crowd. The bulldozers were revving when we pulled in. Ivy stood with her arms crossed, smug as ever. But then Sheriff Dalton's patrol lights hit the gravel, and her face dropped. Dalton got out, walked straight up to her, and asked for permits. She handed him the same forged file. He glanced through it, then turned to me. "You were still county surveyor 3 years ago, right?" "I was," I said, "and that's not my signature." Bruce handed over our documents. Caroline stepped up and explained the forgery. Ivy stammered. James Prescott arrived and, not realizing the crowd had turned, asked Ivy why the driveway wasn't gone yet. He did it in front of everyone. That sealed it. Elaine tried to spin it. "It's all a misunderstanding," she said. "Let's forget this ever happened." But it was too late. Her own HOA board turned on her. Barbara Winters, the treasurer, demanded an emergency vote that night. Others followed. Residents wanted answers. They were stunned to learn their clubhouse, and some of their homes, sat on land that technically belonged to the Renner family trust. The shock was real, but when one resident stood up and asked, that moment shifted everything. Ivy was arrested on the spot for fraud and trespassing. James disappeared into a lawyer's office, probably already prepping to throw her under the bus. He looked like a man who just realized how close he came to losing everything for someone else's lie. In the months that followed, Barbara took over the HOA, rewrote the bylaws, and turned the community around. We worked out the land title adjustments peacefully. I even built a community garden along the shared property line. Roses, squash, sweet corn, whatever folks wanted. Mark, the guy Ivy once forced out of his own land, came back to tend the roses. Said it felt like getting a piece of himself back. Caroline and I established a scholarship fund for young surveyors. We called it the Renner Grant, to remind future generations that lines on a map are more than ink. They're trust, memory, and justice. Sometimes I still wake up thinking about that morning. The coffee, the chaos, the roar of diesel. But I also think about the crowd that showed up, the neighbors who stood beside me, the way truth found its voice, not in a courtroom, but on a gravel road between farms and fences. If you're still watching this, tell me, what would you have done? Do you think I should have made them pay more? Should Ivy go to prison? Or was there something in her desperation that deserves understanding? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading. And if you live in a place with an HOA,